Hi everyone. Who loves pizza? Just about everybody, right? Who loves homemade pizza? Well, I'm going to teach you how to make a homemade pizza today. First, we're going to start with the crust. This is going to take you a couple of days, so don't think you can watch this video and just make a pizza just like that, because we want to take the time for all our flavors to come together and everything to work just right. And that requires us to be patient with our dough. First, to make pizza, we want to bloom our yeast. Now, we just take our liquids. In this case, it's a cup of warm water, warm out of your tap. And we want to feed our yeast so we can bloom it. And I'm going to feed it with a teaspoon of white sugar. Put that in first. If you want to use honey, use honey. Put it in with your water because it's a liquid. You don't want to just put that in with flour. All right, but today we're going to use just your regular sugar. I put in a teaspoon. And now my recipe calls for 1.5 teaspoons of instant yeast. So we want to shake it till it's level, and you're just going to sprinkle it on the surface of your water, and also another half. That first one was a teaspoon, this is a half a teaspoon. I'm going to shake it till it's level, and just pour it right on top. Now, we want to set aside our water, sugar, and yeast mixture so that it can bloom. It'll take about 5 minutes or so. If you could see it at this angle, you start to see the yeast starting to be absorbed into the water. We want to make sure our yeast is good. That's why we bloom it first, because sometimes our yeast goes bad, and we wouldn't get any lift if our yeast was bad. So this will guarantee that we know that our yeast is still good. Set that aside. Next, I want you to sift in 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour into a nice big bowl. And the reason why I tell you to sift your dry ingredients, of course, is because if you don't, you're going to get little chunky bits left, which you do not want in your final product, right? That wouldn't be good. So we always sift. Our next ingredient that we want to mix in is our salt. And I have kosher salt here, so I'm going to mix in. Set that aside. Kosher salt's big. The crystals are bigger than the fine mesh strainer. So, you know, you could try and strain it, but it's all just going to stay in your strainer. You will not get it into your flour. So I'm just going to put a good tablespoon and a half. Same thing. Just pour it in there. Stir this around. I'm going to mix that evenly throughout the flour. All right. Now we can set that aside. Let's see if our yeast is bloomed yet. You'll know it's bloomed when it becomes foamy and starts to rise up the cup. So it's not quite there yet. You can even encourage it a little bit just to kind of encourage the yeast to go down into the water. Like that. I like to do that sometimes too. And you just got to be patient. You got to let it sit. Okay, we'll come back once it's been bloomed. the water shouldn't be hotter than 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Between 100 and 110 is good. If you have to use a thermometer in order to get it just right, do that. If you start getting hotter than 110, you could kill the yeast and it will not even activate. So we, of course, don't want that. Also, make sure that your yeast hasn't expired. I see on the cap here the expiration date. It says May 17th, 2021. So we know it hasn't expired yet, right? Because this is still May of 2020. They do recommend once you've opened this jar that you use it up within 6 months because it won't be as fresh as it could be. You can also buy yeast in packets where it comes in individual serving sizes. And that's a good way to make sure that just one package gets open at a time and it stays good on you too. Okay, this may be hard to see. Can you see it's getting kind of foamy? You see the little bubbles? It's starting to, the yeast is starting to eat that sugar. It loves that sugar or the honey, and it starts to produce this gas that will help us to get rise in our pizza dough. All right, now that it's thoroughly dissolved and nice and foamy, I add 1 teaspoon of olive oil. If you don't have olive oil, you can use vegetable oil, but olive oil lends a good flavor to your pizza crust. Just 1 teaspoon. You can stir it up now. It almost looks like a cappuccino, doesn't it? With that foamy top. We know that our yeast is good because it has bloomed. Next step is mix our liquid with our dry ingredients. And you're gonna have to get your hands dirty on this. But what is a cook's best tools? Clean hands. So wash your hands first, of course. We're going to use a rubber spatula to start mixing our dough, and then eventually we'll move on to our hands. It's going to be really good. This is going to make 2 small individual sized pizzas or a larger or 1 larger pizza crust. So it looks like we got about as good as we can do with our hands. With our rubber spatula. And now I'm going to turn out to my work surface. You can lightly flour your work surface if you need to. I find when I work on either stainless steel tops or your solid surface countertops as opposed to Formica, you won't need to do that. Hopefully we don't have to add more flour in, but I'm just going to dump everything out. See, it hasn't all been incorporated. There's still little bits of flour and all that, but that's okay because we're going to knead it. Kneading is the process of just working the dough, and you're trying to create gluten strands in the dough, and you're just gonna fold it over, push it away from you, and roll it back. Turn it around, push it away from you, pull it back, turn it around, push it away from you, and pull it back. And you just keep working this dough until you get a nice, smooth dough ball. And if it gets too sticky and starts to stick to your countertop, if you gotta put just a little light dusting of flour, you go ahead and do that. I prefer you use less flour than more because we have just enough moisture in our dough and we don't want to get it too dry. And this is gonna take 5 to 10 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, it's gonna take 10 minutes. be patient. If you're doing it in a mixer with a dough hook, it'll take you 5. That I recommend. Basically, pushing the dough, pulling it back, turning the dough. Push the dough with the heel of your hand, pull it back, turn the dough. Push the dough with your hand, fold it back, turn the dough. And you're just gonna keep doing that till you get a nice, smooth dough ball. One hand gets tired, use the other one. 10 minutes, folks, doing it by hand. So if you do have a mixer, like I said, with the dough hook, I'd go to that. Okay, I have to admit I cheated and I went and put this in my mixer with my dough hook, and I needed it for a good 5 to 7 minutes on low. You don't want to go too high. If you're still kneading with your hands, I'm sorry, because it's going to take the full 10 minutes. But you can see that the consistency of the dough has changed. It's a much smoother dough. So what I want to do now is just kind of press the dough out a little bit and just start pulling it, stretching it, and pulling it over onto itself. Take the sides and you just stretch it a little bit. Stretch it a little bit. Flip it over and just start to cup your hands around it and just kind of push and pull at the same time. Then you're going to pull this way and turn it. Let it pull some more. Use the friction between your dough ball and your surface. It's slightly sticky, so it'll help you to pull it into shape. So I'm making just a nice, even dough ball. Twisting it some more. So what we got on the bottom, we have to pinch it together some more. We're going to have a nice, even dough ball. I'm going to do some more twisting, pulling. Some more twisting and pulling. You're just kind of pulling just a little bit to get this bottom piece into a nice round ball. Here is your dough ball. But we're not making pizza yet. Sorry, this is going to take 2 to 3 days in the fridge to slowly rise. And when you take this amount of time to let it slowly rise, it also enhances the flavor of your dough. Oh, it's so good. So you want to give it that time. The yeast is going to do its work. It's not going to be super big, but it will slowly rise and also give that time to cultivate a really delicious flavor. It is worth the wait. We are going to make pizza with our dough ball. All right. Okay, once I've gotten it to this nice smooth consistency and dough ball, I'm going to then put this in a large baggie and put it in the fridge and just let it rest and rise. If I want to make 2 pizzas out of this, I would cut it now and shape it into 2 separate dough balls. If I want to make a big pizza, much larger, maybe 16-inch or more, depends how thin you like your crust, I would just leave it like this. But I think I'm going to make 2 smaller pizzas with this, so I'm going to cut this now. I'm just going to use my big knife. Don't saw against your countertop. My mom will be mad. Matter of fact, put this on a cutting mat or a cutting board to cut it. I'm going to cheat a little bit because this is my table, so I can do what I want with it. But I'm just going to press it down and kind of just cut it in half. You notice I didn't cut into my table. I just cut down enough where I can now shape this into 2 dough balls. So I'm going to do the same thing with this that I did with the other. Taking the sides and tucking them into the center and then pinch it. So remember, trying to make another dough ball, a smaller one. And we're going to do the same thing as we did with the big one. We're going to twist it in our hands, Just kind of cupping it and letting the table and the sticky dough ball do their job. Just gonna pull a little bit and turn. Pull a little bit and turn. Just gonna keep working it and turn. Pull and turn. Bottom's not quite even yet. You see that little dimple in there? We're just gonna try and get a little more of that out. Just pull and turn. Just keep working it. Twisting and pulling. And you might even have to pinch the end just a little bit until you got a nice dough ball. We're gonna set it both in the same bag. We're just gonna separate it. Now you've got this one. I'm going to stretch it the side, put it into the center, stretch this one, put it into the center, stretch it, and stretch it. And then kind of just pull it into a pouch, if you will. See my little pouch that I'm making? I want to really kind of get those ends twisted in there. Turn the pouch over and start twisting and pulling again. I'm not picking the dough up. I'm just letting the stickiness of the dough and my surface kind of work together. So I'm just kind of dragging and twisting, dragging and twisting. And you can twist a little more if you need to. You just keep working with it. Dragging and twisting. This is how you can make some really good hamburger buns. By creating this dough ball, when your buns rise, they won't flatten out as they rise. They'll stay nice and plump, so you get a nice, good, finished hamburger bun. Let's see, I'm gonna look at the bottom. Oh yeah, it's pretty good. Twist a little bit more. Yep, pretty good. Put that in a baggie, and you want the baggie to be big enough so it has room to grow. It has room to rise, because it will rise. Okay. Kind of separate it in the baggie too. This goes in your refrigerator 2 to 3 days. Trust me, it is worth the wait. So I just want to show you, after 24 hours, what my pizza dough looks like. Now, it's not real big and puffy like if you were to rise it on the countertop. It's more of a slower rise, which is what we want. Maybe you can see the back better. You see those bubbles? I don't know if you can see that too well. Hopefully you can. It's creating that gas inside my plastic bag. The reason why we take 2 to 3 days to slow rise our pizza crust is it cultivates way more flavor. It gives us a chewier texture. It is also easier to stretch with our hands and get a nice shape. When we put our dough into a very hot oven, the water inside the dough reacts with the heat and creates steam. The steam then creates air pockets in your dough, which causes it to rise also as you're baking it. And that gives you the nice chewy texture. And it's a more of a fluffier, chewy texture. So it's very important that we do this slow rise, especially for the flavor, because it's starting to ferment. It's a tangy, rich bread flavor. So good. So I'm going to put this back in the fridge, and tomorrow I'm going to bake it off, and we will have homemade pizza. Okay, with our pizza, what do we need? We need pizza sauce, right? All right, this is what I like to do. Do this the day before because you want it to be cool, or at least let it come to room temperature. So if you make the sauce the same day, just let it come to room temperature before you put it on your pizza crust. You don't want hot sauce on your crust. It'll start to, on your dough, it'll make your dough gummy. Of course, we don't want that. So I am going to use a 28-ounce can of peeled whole tomatoes because, whoops, be careful. I'm gonna puree it in my food processor. You might want to keep a rag around to wipe your hand off. Anyway, just clean yourself up. And I've taken about 1/3 of an onion. You could even do 1/2 of an onion. And we're just gonna dice it and turn on your heat onto your saucepan. Just a saucepan. We're gonna turn on to about medium high. And we're going to add some olive oil to our saucepan. Good amount, just enough to coat the bottom. I like to saute my onions and my garlic together before I put it in my sauce. I just happen to like it that way instead of just raw onion and raw garlic. So back to my onion. I'm gonna peel it. Gonna get our claw going. Let me get this out of the way. I'm going to slice it horizontally, not all the way through, a little bit intact so it can help you to hold on to it. So I've made 2 horizontal slices, if you can see. And now I'm going to chop. It can just be a rough chop because you're going to puree it with your tomatoes, so it doesn't have to be perfect dices, nothing like that. I'm just kind of cutting it up a little bit so it can cook more evenly in my pan. When you get to the end, just, there you go, just a rough chop. Garlic, be careful with this one. I would rather you use a bench scraper to open your garlic, or you can use your chef's knife, but the bench scraper, of course, is safer. I don't have a bench scraper with me right now, so I'm going to use my knife. You lay your garlic down, you put your knife on the garlic, and you just kind of smack it, or push it rather, and see how it just opens up your garlic? Cut off what you don't need, which is the little stem piece, and then just a rough chop with your garlic as well, because why? We're going to puree with our tomatoes. You'll know that your oil is hot enough when the oil in the pan starts to just move gently around the pan. You kind of just see it shimmer. So of course we don't want to put in our vegetables until it's ready to go. It will take longer then for the pan and the oil to heat up if we do that too early. Okay, while we're waiting for that to heat up, I'm going to move stuff out of the way. I'm going to get prepared to saute my onions and my garlic. Keep your onions and your garlic separate. Onions are going to take 7 to 10 minutes to cook until they're just translucent, and garlic only takes a matter of 30 seconds to a minute. So of course we will be sauteing our onions first. And now I'm starting to see just a little type of shimmer in my pan. I don't know if you can see it. It kind of just feels like it's moving, like there's a little bit of a current there. And I can tell then that my oil is heated up. And hearing that sizzle when you first put your food in is a good indicator that it's ready. Okay, use either a wooden spoon or maybe a heat-safe spatula. The rubber spatulas now come with a silicone head that can go up to 450 degrees. You wouldn't want to just use a rubber spatula. You want is specific to heat. I can turn my onions down to a medium, between medium and medium low. And we're just gonna gently saute them. And I'm gonna put a good pinch of kosher salt. If you're using table salt, you use half that amount. That would be half a pinch. But I like to use kosher salt. We are going to let these cook until they become translucent. It's going to take, oh, I don't know, just a couple minutes. You watch it. Translucent means that you can almost see through the onion. It won't be opaque. Opaque means you can't see through it. So you look at it and you say, oh yeah, it almost looks like I could see through it. Almost. And the reason I'm turning down my heat is to not brown the onions. I'm not looking to brown them. I'm just looking to make them translucent. I'm just gonna put in my chopped clove of garlic. You can put in as much garlic as you like. If you like more of a garlicky flavor, put it in. Put in 2 cloves, put in 3. But we're gonna start with 1. And I'm starting to smell the garlic. Oh, it smells really good. You do not want to brown garlic. If you brown it, you've burned it, and it gets a really bitter, acrid taste. You don't want that. Okay, I am happy with my onions. I'm gonna turn off my heat. Not gonna cook this sauce down. I'm just doing the onions and the garlic because I don't like to use just raw garlic. So take your big can of tomatoes. You don't have to worry about crushing them because we're gonna do that in the food processor in a minute. I'm just gonna put them in there. I like the Chanto brand. You can buy that almost anywhere, but you use your favorite, whichever you like. We're gonna wanna add some pepper, of course. Good couple grinds. And a couple more pinches of kosher salt. Once we have pureed this in our food processor, we can taste it and make sure it is salty enough. So just do a little pinch at a time. Here's an FYI. When you open a can like this, obviously you're gonna have a lid left over. If you just throw that lid away in your trash can, you could possibly cut somebody because maybe they're pushing the trash down in the can, you know, a day or 2 later, and you're like, oops, slice my hand open. Always, always throw the lid back in the can before you throw it away. That way you'll protect somebody from getting their hand sliced off. Let's get out our handy dandy food processor. And you're just gonna use the regular steel blade. Okay. Now this sauce is not real hot because you put the tomatoes in there and they weren't hot, so it's not gonna be too hard to try and get it into our food processor. We're just gonna use a regular steel blade. You may need a different utensil instead of just your wooden spoon to get this out. So I'm just gonna scoop this into the food processor. Now you may think, well, you've forgotten your basil or your oregano, you know, your typical pizza seasoning flavors, but I haven't. These pizzas I'm gonna make with fresh basil, and that will be, of course, the next day. So therefore, I'm not gonna put any on it now. You can buy the canned tomatoes that already has basil in it. You know, if you like that. That's not gonna hurt any. But I happen to be using fresh basil tomorrow on my pizza, so I'm not adding that in. All right, We've got everything safely in our food processor. If you don't have a food processor, but you have a potato masher, like this, you could mash your sauce with this. It won't be as smooth of a consistency, but it will do. So let's whirl this away. See how smooth that is? One more note. Canned tomatoes can be very acidic. So how do we balance that out? We balance it out with either a little bit of sugar or a little bit of honey. I'm literally putting in a half a teaspoon of sugar, but you could use a half a teaspoon of honey too if you'd rather do that. It's not going to make your sauce sweet. It's just going to give it a balanced flavor where it doesn't taste so acidic. It'll bring out the sweetness of the tomatoes too. So yum, right? All right, well, we got to give this a taste test. Let me check for consistency. Right now it looks good. Okay. Tomorrow it may look a little loose. So I'm going to keep some tomato sauce on hand just in case I need to tighten it up. I'll show you that when I make the pizza. But let's taste, make sure we have the proper amount of salt and pepper and sugar. Wow, that tastes pretty good. I taste the onion. I taste the garlic. It's not sweet. I just taste tomato, the sweetness of the tomato. We put in just a little bit of black pepper. I don't know, maybe a quarter of a teaspoon. Unless you have a grinder, then give it good 2-3 grinds. A good pinch of salt. Do I need more salt? Well, I tasted it. I'm like, oh no, I think that's okay. I don't need any more salt. But if I want more salt, I can put it in. Another option for your tomato sauce, if you like, you can put in red chili flakes and give it just a little bit of a kick. I think I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to put in a sprinky dink of chili flakes. How much is a sprinky dink? As much as you want. But remember, this is going to sit overnight, and so those flavors are going to be enhanced, and so will the spices. So go easy, because by tomorrow it'll be hotter than what it is today. You can always add more chilies tomorrow. Give that a good stir. Let's check our stuff. I am happy with my sauce. Now, if I didn't have fresh basil or fresh oregano to go on my pizza, I would put in either some dried basil or dried oregano. I like them both. It all comes down to personal preference. But here is your sauce. And since I made this the day ahead of my pizza, I'm just gonna store it in the fridge overnight, and when I'm ready to make my pizza, I'll take it out about an hour or so to let it come to room temperature. All right, there you go, pizza sauce. It is now time to assemble our pizza. I have removed my 72-hour risen pizza dough out of the fridge about 30 minutes before I'm ready to use it, just to warm it up a bit. It's kind of hard to stretch, but it's totally cold. I've also set my oven to 450 degrees. I have a pizza stone in the oven. And for 30 minutes, it'll be at 450 degrees. Then I will turn my oven to broil for 10 minutes. If you have a pizza peel or a flat tortilla pan like this, you can use this as your pizza peel. It's where you just kind of lay your pizza down. I have sprinkled it with flour. If you have cornmeal, I would put just a little bit of cornmeal on there instead, and it's so that your dough doesn't stick to the peel, so you can put it onto your pizza stone itself. So I've done that. My pizza sauce is at room temperature also. I brought that out early. I have extra tomato sauce if I feel that my pizza sauce is a little too loose, as in watery. It doesn't look like I'm going to need that today though. Okay, what do you want to put on your pizza? Anything you want. It's your pizza. Today, I'm making a black olive and green olive pizza, also a cheese pizza. Because I didn't add any type of basil to my pizza sauce, I'm going to cut up fresh basil to put on my pizza. So I've gotten some basil leaves, fresh, and I've torn them off. I've torn the stems off, and I'm just going to lay them down, and we're going to cut them. We're going to lay them on top of each other, and you just kind of roll it up like a cigar or a burrito, and rolling it into a tight roll. This will make it easier to cut my basil. You can put whole pieces of basil on your pizza, but I find when you start to bite into it, then you kind of get a whole piece of basil in your mouth, and you know, I don't know. I like to just cut it a little bit. And just, there you go. You got ribbons of basil. Oh, it smells really good. Let's set that aside. Now I'm going to stretch my pizza dough. By the way, shred your cheese. This is where you have to be careful. Okay, now I want to stretch my pizza dough. It's a little sticky, a little moist. Lightly, and I mean lightly, flour your surface. And just put your dough down on the surface, kind of push it out with your fingertips. Get some dough, a little bit of flour on the other side. Keep pressing out with your fingertips, not too thin, you're just kind of trying to make a nice disc. Now you're just gonna start stretching. You're gonna use your knuckles to stretch. You're gonna put them under and just kind of stretch the pizza and turn it, stretch a little more. Be careful you don't stretch it too far where you make a hole in your crust. You don't want a holy pizza, right? Okay, so I'm gingerly just using the back of my hand to stretch this dough. Whoops. If you keep your your hand just kind of gently curled under, I'll lay this down and show you. You're just kind of using this motion. You're just letting it lay over, your knuckles are kind of pulling it apart. You just want to be really careful. You can, if you feel it's getting thicker in a different area, I like to lay it down and just start gently tugging on the areas that are maybe thicker than the other areas, if you will. And so now we're getting to the point where it's getting thin enough. I'm starting to see through my dough. If you're not quite secure in stretching your dough that way, you can just lay it on the countertop too and just gently pull. See how I'm just pulling it out very gently. Don't go too fast or too hard or too aggressively, because you'll put a hole in your pizza crust. And this is an artisanal pizza. We're not trying to make it look perfectly round. If you can get your crust perfectly round, more power to you. All right, looks like I've got my crust about the size of my pan here. Whoop. I'm just gonna pick it up and lay it on my pan, and I could just adjust the pizza crust. There you go. See? Works perfect, doesn't it? The best way to put sauce on your pizza is with a ladle. I'm just gonna give myself a nice big scoop of sauce. How much sauce you want on there? Well, you want enough to cover it. If you want a little more sauce, put a little more sauce on. A little less, put less on. But you see how the back of the bowl, it makes it so easy to just swirl that pizza sauce all the way out to the edge. Yum. All right. That sauce looks pretty good. It doesn't look too watery to me, so I'm not going to add any tomato sauce. Now it's time to add cheese. I've got some grated mozzarella cheese. That's really good for melting. And this is grated Parmesan. Also, I think I'm going to lay down slices of provolone. That's really tasty too on a pizza. Provolone. What type of toppings do you like on your pizza? You like pepperoni? You like pineapple and ham? Maybe you like sausage or onions and green bell pepper. The sky's the limit. When you're making your own pizza, you can go crazy, right? If you do not have a pizza stone, you can use a cookie sheet to put your pizza on. I would spray it with some nonstick spray and maybe sprinkle that too a little bit. Some cornmeal, and you can use that. The pizza stone allows you to get a really nice crisp crust on the bottom. It increases the heat within your oven than just maybe a cookie sheet. But you know, you can do it with a cookie sheet. Maybe you have like a pizza grate too, and it allows that heat to pass through in the air to get to the bottom of your crust, and that really crisps it up also. Whatever you have, just turn your oven on to 450 and let it preheat for half an hour. If you are using a pizza stone, then for 10 more minutes, turn your oven on to broil. We will not broil our pizza. We will turn that off, of course, when we're ready to cook it. But for 10 minutes, we want to turn it on to broil. Now I'd like to put on the Parmesan. Parmesan has a tendency to burn easily. So you want to put this down first before you put down any other cheeses. And I like a lot of cheese, so I'm not going to skimp. I can put in as much as I want because it's my pizza. And I would like some black olives. I like green olives too. But, you know, you put on whatever you want. Sky's the limit, right? You like anchovies? Those little fish? I don't care for anchovies. I remember over in Italy one time we ordered a cheese pizza for our kids. They were quite young. And it came to the table and they just wouldn't eat it. They said, oh, this is awful. We don't want to eat it. And I'm like, how can you not like a cheese pizza from Italy? I mean, seriously. Well, I can understand why once I took a bite. It had anchovy paste on it, and it tasted like they put tuna on their cheese pizza, and I don't know of any child who likes tuna on their pizza. You know, there's some adults there who like that. There might be some kids out there, but I don't know. Anyway, they did not like the pizza. They would not eat it. We had to send it back and say, please leave the anchovy paste off, because it's awful. But if you like anchovies, hey, go for it. To each his own. I'm only going to do green olives on half because I'm not sure if my daughter wants green olives on her half. So we'll just do half and half. You can do that too. All right. Now I want to put some provolone on there. I'm going to just put that around. Oh, this is good stuff. Maybe tear a piece off so I can fit it in the center there. And we've got our fresh basil. I'm going to put that under some of my cheese because our basil can burn easily too, so we don't want to do that. Doesn't that look good? Yum. Now our fresh mozzarella on top of that. Oh, this is good stuff. And you can put on cheddar cheese. There's all kinds of cheeses you can add to your pizza. Anything you like. Mozzarella is good because it is a good soft melting cheese. You want the cheese to melt, right? Now I've piled my stuff on. Hopefully I can get my pizza off this pan and onto my pizza stone. Oh, one last thing. I'm gonna take some olive oil and just a drizzle across the top. Yum. A pinch of kosher salt. Just hold your hand about 12 inches away, and that way you can hit more of a surface. Of course, fresh ground black pepper. And if you want to put red chili flakes on top, you can do that too. All right, I'm gonna put this in the oven. When I come back, I'm gonna show you our finished pizza, ready to eat. All right, here we go. Here's our finished product. Ooh, doesn't that look good? I took it off my pizza stone and put it back on my flat pan here. When you're laying your dough out on your pizza peel or your pan, you really should use cornmeal and scatter it over the pan, because you want to be able to shake that pizza dough. You want to keep it loose, so then when you transfer it to your pizza stone in the oven, it'll slide right off. So be very careful and mindful of that. But this is our finished product. You can even put some fresh basil on top to make it look delicious. All right, there's your pizza. Yum.